A disabled puppy begs a German Shepherd for help. But what the dog did next is incredible. Left alone in the dirt with nothing but wheels for legs, the little one stumbles into the territory of a dog feared by everyone. A massive, battle-scarred beast known for driving others away. But instead of attacking, the shepherd does something no one expects. Because deep beneath the growls and scars, he's hiding something. Something buried. Something he never wanted anyone to find. And when a child goes missing in the woods, everything changes. What secret has this silent giant been guarding? And how far will a broken puppy go to unlock the truth? What really happened the day that dog vanished from the force? And why was the truth buried with him? Your presence here is powerful. In a world full of noise, it's the quiet gestures of compassion that truly stand out. If your heart still makes room for kindness, you're already one of us. The cold rain pelted against Bixby's small, scruffy body as he dragged himself through the muddy junkyard. His makeshift wheelchair, cobbled together from old toy parts and wire, squeaked with every movement. The wheels caught on twisted metal and debris, making each step a battle against both his disability and the elements. Thunder rumbled overhead, making him flinch. His stomach growled even louder than the storm, reminding him that he hadn't eaten in 2 days. The usual scraps he found in the junkyard had been washed away by the downpour, leaving nothing but wet cardboard and rusty cans. Bixby shivered, pulling himself under the partial shelter of an old refrigerator. Water dripped through his matted fur as he caught his breath, his small chest heaving with exhaustion. He wasn't sure how much longer he could survive like this. That's when he remembered the whispered conversations he'd overheard from passing strays. They spoke in hushed, fearful tones about Grim, the fierce German shepherd who controlled the barnyard across the highway. Some said he was a former police dog gone bad. Others claimed he'd torn apart any animal who dared enter his territory. Maybe, Bixby whispered to himself, his voice barely audible over the rain. Maybe he'd at least make it quick. The thought of facing the legendary Grim made him tremble, but the gnawing hunger in his belly left him no choice. With determination that belied his small size, Bixby wheeled himself out from under the refrigerator. The cart attached to his back legs caught on everything, but he pressed forward. Each push through the mud was a struggle, the wheels spinning uselessly before finding purchase. The rural highway stretched before him like a black river in the rain. Bixby waited at its edge, his heart pounding as headlights approached. The truck roared past, spraying him with dirty water. He could barely see through the darkness and rain, but he knew he had to time this perfectly. "You can do this," he encouraged himself, watching for his chance. When the road finally cleared, Bixby pushed his cart forward as fast as he could manage. The wheels wobbled dangerously on the uneven pavement. A car horn blared suddenly, making him yelp and wheel faster. He barely made it to the other side as the vehicle swerved around him. The barnyard loomed ahead, dark and forbidding. Old wooden fences marked the boundary of Grim's territory, and Bixby could smell the lingering scent markers of the fierce dog. Every instinct told him to turn back, but the memory of endless hungry nights in the junkyard pushed him forward. "Oh, hello?" Bixby called out softly, wheeling past the fence line. The rain had lessened to a drizzle, but darkness was falling fast. I know I'm not supposed to be here, but I need help." Something moved in the shadows of the barn. Bixby's wheels caught in the mud and he struggled to turn around. A low growl froze him in place. From the darkness emerged a massive German shepherd, his battle-scarred face and intense eyes even more frightening than the story suggested. Grim moved with powerful grace, circling the small puppy with deliberate steps. "You either have incredible courage or a death wish, little one," Grim's deep voice rumbled. He stopped in front of Bixby, towering over him. "Don't you know what happens to trespassers?" Bixby's legs trembled, but he forced himself to look up at the fierce dog. I know, but I'm going to die anyway if I stay in the junkyard. At least this way it might be faster than starving." Something flickered in Grim's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or something deeper. He studied Bixby's makeshift cart and thin frame with an unreadable expression. "You cross the highway in this storm, with those wheels, just to face certain death?" Grim asked, his tone shifting slightly. Bixby nodded, water dripping from his ears. "I didn't have anywhere else to go. Everyone else just looks away when they see me. At least you're looking at me like I exist." The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Bixby waited for the killing blow, but instead, Grim let out a long breath that seemed to carry the weight of years. "Come," Grim said finally, turning toward the barn. "You'll catch your death in this rain, and it seems you've worked too hard to survive for that to happen now." Bixby blinked in surprise, hardly daring to believe what he'd heard. Cautiously, he wheeled his cart forward, following the massive German Shepherd into the shelter of the barn. He had crossed into Grim's territory expecting death, but somehow he'd found something else entirely, a chance. Inside the barn, water dripped steadily from Bixby's soaked fur, forming small puddles beneath his makeshift cart. His whole body trembled, partly from cold, partly from fear, as he took in his new surroundings. The barn was surprisingly clean and well kept, with neat stacks of hay bales creating separate areas, like rooms in a house. Grim's massive form filled the doorway behind him, casting a long shadow in the dim light. The German Shepherd's scarred face seemed even more intimidating up close. His eyes, sharp and alert, tracked every movement Bixby made. A low growl rumbled in his chest as he circled the small puppy, his powerful muscles rippling beneath his grizzled fur. Bixby held perfectly still, his heart hammering against his ribs. He'd heard stories about Grim's ferocity, about how no dog who entered his territory ever left. Yet something in the big dog's movements seemed more cautious than aggressive. Without a word, Grim turned and walked toward the barn's entrance. He paused at the gate, deliberately leaving it slightly open, before disappearing into the rainy darkness. The message was clear. Bixby wasn't a prisoner. The realization that he wasn't about to be torn apart, combined with the exhaustion of his journey, hit Bixby all at once. His legs buckled beneath him, and he collapsed onto a pile of soft hay. His wheels creaked as they settled at awkward angles, but he was too tired to adjust them. "Thank you," he whispered to the empty barn, though he doubted Grim could hear him. Within moments, his eyes drifted closed, and he fell into a deep sleep. When Bixby awoke, pale morning light filtered through the barn's wooden slats. His fur had dried, though his muscles ached from the previous day's journey. From his corner, he had a clear view of much of the barn's interior. More importantly, he could observe Grim without being too obvious about it. The German Shepherd lay near the barn's entrance, his head raised and alert. Every few minutes he would patrol the perimeter, moving with the precision that spoke of military training. But what caught Bixby's attention were the little things. The way Grim's ears flattened at the sound of approaching vehicles, how he pressed himself against the wall when human voices drifted from the nearby farmhouse. Around midday, a truck rumbled up the driveway. Grim immediately tensed, his whole body going rigid. The farmer's boots crunched on gravel as he approached the barn. Without a sound, Grim slipped behind a stack of hay bales, making himself invisible. His breathing was shallow, controlled, but Bixby could see the fear in his eyes. The farmer didn't enter the barn, just tossed some fresh hay inside and left. It took several minutes after the truck's departure before Grim emerged from his hiding spot. His movements were stiff, almost mechanical, as if he was forcing himself to appear normal. Bixby watched this pattern repeat throughout the day. The fierce, legendary Grim, who supposedly terrorized the countryside, was actually terrified of human contact. When a sudden clap of thunder made the big dog startle, Bixby saw something he never expected: vulnerability. That evening, as shadows lengthened across the barn floor, Bixby carefully wheeled himself closer to where Grim lay. The German Shepherd watched him approach, but didn't growl or move away. "The farmers," Bixby said softly. "They don't know you're here, do they?" Grim's eyes narrowed, but he answered in his deep, gravelly voice, "Number. And it's better that way." "You're hiding from someone," Bixby observed. It wasn't a question. Grim turned his head away, but not before Bixby caught a glimpse of deep pain in his expression. The scars on his face seemed to tell a story of their own, one of betrayal rather than aggression. "You can stay," Grim said abruptly, changing the subject. "But don't draw attention to the barn. And don't expect me to be your friend." Bixby nodded, understanding that this gruff permission was more than most received from the notorious Grim. As he wheeled himself back to his corner, he realized something important. The monster of local legend was actually a wounded soul in hiding. The snarls and threats were just a fence, like the barn's walls, keeping others at a safe distance. That night, as Bixby settled into his haybed, he heard Grim's steady breathing from across the barn. The big dog was still alert, still guarding, but something had shifted. They were two broken creatures who had found an unexpected sanctuary, one unable to walk properly, the other unable to trust. Days melted together in the quiet sanctuary of the barn. Bixby found comfort in its familiar shadows and the steady rhythm of farm life. Every morning, roosters announced dawn from the nearby chicken coop. By midday, the summer heat turned the barn into a warm haven. Evenings brought cool breezes through the wooden slats. Grim kept to his routine, patrolling, watching, hiding when humans came near. But there were moments when his guard slipped, revealing glimpses of something more. Bixby noticed how the big dog would sometimes pause near a broken-down kennel in the corner, his eyes distant as if lost in memory. The kennel was old, its metal rusted and paint peeling, pushed far back where shadows gathered. One afternoon, while Grim was on his patrol, Bixby watched him dig beneath the loose floorboards near the kennel. The German Shepherd moved with purpose, carefully replacing the boards afterward. His behavior was odd, almost protective of whatever lay hidden below. That evening, after Grim left for his nightly patrol around the property, curiosity got the better of Bixby. His wheels squeaked softly as he made his way to the spot where Grim had been digging. The floorboards weren't completely settled, making it easier for Bixby to nose them aside. His heart pounded as he peered into the darkness below. Something fabric caught his eye. Using his front paws, he carefully pulled it out. Dust scattered as a worn vest emerged. Not just any vest, but a police K-9 unit vest. The patches were faded, but still readable. Police K-9 unit, Officer Grim. Bixby's breath caught in his throat. With trembling paws, he pulled out more items. Official tags with Grim's name and badge number, leather leashes worn smooth from use, and what looked like commendation medals. Each item told part of a story of service, of honor, of belonging. "What are you doing?" Grim's voice, sharp with alarm, made Bixby jump. The German Shepherd stood in the doorway, his body rigid with tension. "I'm sorry," Bixby stammered, backing away from the scattered items. I wanted to understand." Grim's eyes fixed on the police vest, and something in his fierce expression cracked. He moved closer, his paw gently touching the worn fabric. "That was another life," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "A life I lost." As if the discovery had broken a dam, memories from conversations with other strays flooded back to Bixby. Whispered stories about a police dog who'd vanished after a raid gone wrong. Some said he'd turned violent, others that he'd been betrayed. "You were a police dog," Bixby said softly. "A hero." Grim's laugh was bitter. "I was naive. Thought serving meant something. Thought loyalty went both ways." He looked at his reflection in a dusty window, his scarred face a testament to past battles. One bad night, one mistake that wasn't even mine, and suddenly I was a liability. "What happened?" Bixby asked, wheeling closer despite his fear. "A raid went wrong. Someone tipped off the criminals. My handler, ... Grim's voice caught. He blamed me for the failure. Said I hesitated, disobeyed commands. But I didn't. I followed every order, even when I sensed something was wrong." His eyes grew distant. "Next day, they came to take me to be..." He couldn't finish the sentence. "I ran. never stopped running. Bixby looked at the scattered items, symbols of a life of service and dedication. The legend of the fierce, dangerous stray was crumbling before his eyes, revealing something far more painful. A loyal officer, betrayed and abandoned. You've been hiding here ever since, Bixby realized, keeping everyone away because you're afraid of being found. Grim nodded slowly. The farmers leave food for their barn cats. It's enough, and no one looks for a dangerous stray too closely. He began carefully gathering the items, each touch gentle despite his large paws. The aggressive reputation keeps people away, keeps me safe. As Grim returned his treasures to their hiding place, Bixby watched with new understanding. The gruff exterior, the isolation, the fear of humans. It all made sense now. The monster of local legend was really a wounded hero, carrying the weight of injustice alone. Your secret's safe with me, Bixby promised, his voice firm despite his small size. But you're not what they say you are, Grim. You never were. Grim looked at him for a long moment, his expression softening slightly. No, he agreed quietly. But sometimes it's easier to be feared than to trust again. The morning quiet shattered as sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights flashed through the barn's weathered walls, casting eerie shadows. Bixby wheeled himself to the barn door, his makeshift cart creaking beneath him. Police cars and emergency vehicles lined the rural road. People gathered in clusters, their voices carrying across the morning air. Fragments of conversation drifted toward the barn. 6-year-old girl wandered into the woods last night. Search parties. Grim appeared beside Bixby, his body tense. The German shepherd's ears twitched at each new siren. Each shouted command. His training was evident in the way he tracked the movement of the search teams, analyzing their patterns. They're searching the wrong area, Grim muttered, almost to himself. His nose lifted to the wind, testing the air. The scent. It's coming from the eastern woods. Bixby watched as more volunteers arrived, forming lines to comb through the western forest. You can smell her? He asked, his voice quiet with awe. Yes. Grim's answer was clipped, his body rigid with conflict. She's scared. Alone. Then we have to help. Bixby's wheels squeaked as he turned to face Grim. You know these woods better than anyone. You could find her. Grim's scarred face twisted with emotion. I can't. They'll see me. They'll think. His voice trailed off, heavy with old pain. I'm the dangerous stray, remember? They'll shoot first and ask questions later. But a child's life is at stake. Bixby pressed, his small voice fierce with conviction. You were a police dog. You saved lives. It's still who you are, no matter what they did to you. The morning sun caught the silver in Grim's fur as he stood frozen, torn between his instincts to help and his fear of human betrayal. The search party's voices grew more urgent, more desperate. A mother's cry pierced the air. Bixby wheeled closer to Grim, his eyes bright with determination. You're not alone this time. I'll come with you. Grim looked down at the small, disabled puppy with surprise. You can't navigate those woods with your wheels. Watch me, Bixby said firmly. Sometimes the ones everyone underestimates can surprise you. A child's distant cry echoed through the trees. The sound broke through Grim's hesitation like a thunderbolt. His head snapped toward the eastern woods, every muscle tensing. Years of training and purpose flooded back, overwhelming his fear. With a powerful leap, Grim burst from the barn shadow. His paws pounded against the earth as he raced toward the tree line, following a scent only he could detect. Behind him, Bixby's wheels spun frantically as the small dog pushed himself forward, refusing to be left behind. The forest closed around them like a dark green maze. Grim moved with precision, his nose leading them deeper into the wilderness. Bixby struggled to keep up, his cart catching on roots and stones, but he pressed on with fierce determination. The scent's getting stronger, Grim called back, slowing his pace slightly so Bixby could follow. She's been here recently. Bixby's wheels splashed through a shallow stream, the cold water soaking his fur. Which way? Grim paused, testing the air. East. She's trying to find her way home, but she's going in circles. His ears flattened with concern. And we're not alone out here. A low growl rumbled through the underbrush. Something large moved in the shadows ahead. The scent of wild predators mingled with the girl's trail, confirming Grim's warning. They were racing against more than time now. Hurry, Grim urged, his powerful body tense with urgency. We have to find her first. Together, they pressed deeper into the darkening woods. Bixby's wheels left tiny tracks beside Grim's larger paw prints, an unlikely pair of rescuers united by purpose, racing against time and danger to save a lost child. The forest grew denser, more threatening, but neither dog hesitated. Grim's past as a K-9 officer and Bixby's unwavering spirit drove them forward, deeper into the unknown, where somewhere ahead, a frightened child waited to be found. The dense forest canopy cast dappled shadows across the muddy ground. Bixby's wheels caught on every root and stone, making his progress painfully slow. His makeshift cart clanked and rattled as he pushed forward, refusing to give up, despite his exhaustion. "The scent's stronger here," Grim called back, his nose working the air. "She's close." A soft whimper drifted through the trees. Both dogs froze, ears perked. The sound came again, the unmistakable cry of a frightened child. They pushed through a thick patch of brambles. There, at the edge of a steep ravine, huddled a small girl in pink pajamas. Her face was streaked with dirt and tears, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. But it wasn't just her precarious position that made Grim halt abruptly. A rattlesnake lay coiled less than 6 feet from the child, its warning rattle cutting through the forest silence like angry beads shaking in a jar. "Don't move," Grim whispered to Bixby, his body tense with training and instinct. Any sudden movement could make it strike. The girl sobbed quietly, too terrified to move. The snake's head swayed slightly, its forked tongue testing the air. Grim's mind raced through options. He could try to reach the girl, but his approach would likely startle the snake into striking. The ravine on one side and thick brush on the other left little room for maneuvering. Bixby studied the scene, his small heart pounding. Then he noticed how the snake's head tracked movement. An idea formed, a desperate, dangerous idea. "I can draw it away," Bixby whispered. Grim's head snapped toward him. "Number, it's too risky." "My wheels make noise. They'll get its attention." Bixby's voice trembled, but held firm. "Once it follows me, you can grab her." "Bixby, you can't outrun a snake. Not with your—" Grim's eyes flicked to the cart strapped to Bixby's back legs. "I don't need to outrun it. I just need to distract it long enough." Bixby's wheels squeaked as he shifted position. "Trust me." Before Grim could protest further, Bixby began moving. His cart rattled against rocks and twigs, creating a steady rhythm of metallic sounds. The snake's head turned toward the noise, its rattle intensifying. Bixby's heart thundered in his chest as he wheeled himself parallel to the snake, keeping a careful distance. The reptile's dark eyes fixed on him, its coiled body tensing. "Hey there," Bixby called softly, his voice shaking but determined. "Over here. Follow me." The snake's head weaved, tracking Bixby's movement, its muscles bunched, preparing to strike. Grim watched in horror and amazement as the small disabled puppy deliberately drew the deadly snake's attention. Every instinct screamed at him to stop this, to protect the vulnerable young dog. But he understood. This was their only chance. The snake lunged suddenly, its strike blindingly fast. Bixby jerked his cart sideways, the wheels catching on a root. He tumbled, the snake's fangs missing him by inches. The reptile recoiled, preparing for another strike. "Now!" Bixby shouted, his wheels spinning frantically as he scrambled away. Grim burst into action. With powerful strides, he reached the girl in 2 bounds. His teeth gently caught her pajama collar, and he pulled her away from the ravine's edge. The child instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck, clinging to his thick fur. The snake struck again at Bixby, who barely managed to roll his cart behind a fallen log. The rattling grew louder, more threatening. "Run!" Bixby yelled to Grim. "Get her out of here!" Grim hesitated for a split second, torn between his mission and leaving Bixby behind. But the girl's safety had to come first. It was what they had come for. He turned and raced through the forest, the child secure in his careful grip. Behind him, he heard Bixby's wheels scraping against rocks, the snake's rattle, and the brave puppy's labored breathing as he fought for his life. Shouts echoed through the trees. The search party was close. Grim burst into a small clearing where several volunteers and police officers stood with flashlights. They raised their weapons at his sudden appearance, but the sight of the child on his back made them pause. "Lucy!" a woman screamed, rushing forward. The girl lifted her head, crying out, "Mommy!" Grim gently set the child down, and she ran into her mother's arms. The officers approached cautiously, but the girl's voice rang out clear and strong. "He saved me. Him and the little dog with wheels." "Bixby," Grim barked suddenly, remembering his friend. "He's still back there." Without waiting for the humans to react, Grim spun and charged back into the forest. He followed their scent trail, fear clutching at his heart. The rattling had stopped. The forest was silent. The search party found Bixby huddled behind the fallen log, shaking but alive. The snake had slithered away, leaving the brave puppy with only a few scrapes from his frantic escape. As volunteers carried him out of the forest, Grim padded alongside, his protective gaze never leaving the small dog. News of the rescue spread through the town like wildfire. By morning, reporters gathered outside the local veterinary clinic where Bixby was being treated. Camera flashes lit up the windows as journalists tried to catch a glimpse of the heroic dogs. Inside, Dr. Martinez cleaned Bixby's scrapes while marveling at his makeshift wheelchair cart. "You're one tough little guy," she said softly, applying antiseptic to a cut on his shoulder. Grim lay in the corner of the exam room, refusing to leave despite the staff's initial protests. The girl's mother had insisted on paying for Bixby's treatment. "Those dogs saved my Lucy," she told reporters, tears in her eyes. "The way they worked together, it was like they knew exactly what to do." People began recognizing Grim from old newspaper photos. Wasn't he that police dog, they whispered, the one who disappeared years ago? The story grew bigger as locals remembered the German Shepherd's past life as a decorated K-9 officer. But just as public opinion was shifting, just as people began seeing past Grim's scars and intimidating size, a familiar figure stepped into the clinic. Former Police Chief Granger pushed through the waiting room doors, his gray uniform still crisp despite his retirement. His face was hard, eyes cold as they fixed on Grim. "That dog is dangerous," he announced loudly, making everyone in the room freeze. "He's a failed K-9 who cost this department dearly." Grim's ears flattened against his head. He backed into the corner of the exam room, his body tense with remembered pain. "But he just saved a child," Dr. Martinez protested, standing protectively near her patients. "He botched a major drug raid 5 years ago," Granger continued, his voice carrying through the clinic. "Led his handler into an ambush. 2 officers were injured because of his mistake. He's unstable, unpredictable." Bixby watched from his cage as Granger pulled out official-looking papers. "I've already contacted Animal Control. As the former chief who oversaw his training, I'm recommending immediate detention and," he paused for effect, "possible euthanasia." A collective gasp filled the room. Grim's head lowered, the old shame and betrayal visible in his eyes. "You can't do that," Bixby barked, pushing against his cage door. "He's a hero. You're lying." But the damage was spreading. People began backing away from Grim, their earlier admiration turning to suspicion. A mother pulled her curious child behind her. Someone whispered about calling the police. "I have the documentation right here," Granger said, waving the papers. "Failed training assessments, behavioral incidents, the official report from the raid. This dog is a liability to public safety." Dr. Martinez stood her ground. He just helped save a little girl's life. That has to count for something. A publicity stunt, Granger dismissed. He's trying to rehabilitate his image, but I was there. I saw what he did. Some animals can't be trusted, no matter how they might pretend otherwise. 2 animal control officers entered the clinic, leashes in hand. Granger pointed at Grim. There's your target. Handle him with extreme caution. Bixby pressed his face against the cage bars, his heart breaking as he watched his friend's shoulders sink in defeat. Grim didn't growl or resist as the officers approached. He simply stood there, accepting this final betrayal as if he'd always known it would come. "Wait!" Bixby cried. "Please, you don't understand. He's not dangerous. He's been protecting me, helping me. There has to be more to the story." But his small voice was drowned out by the commotion. The officers slipped a catch pole around Grim's neck. The proud German shepherd who had faced down danger to save a child now looked broken, his spirit crushed under the weight of Granger's accusations. From his cage, Bixby watched helplessly as they led Grim away. The former police dog cast one last look at his small friend, a look full of regret, gratitude, and goodbye. "I'll find out the truth," Bixby whispered fiercely, his paws trembling. "I won't let them do this to you." As Grim disappeared through the clinic doors, Granger lingered behind, straightening his uniform with satisfaction. But he didn't notice the determined glint in Bixby's eyes, or the way the small dog's mind was already working, piecing together the fragments of Grim's past. Something about Granger's story didn't add up, and Bixby was going to find out what it was before it was too late. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the veterinary clinic's windows as Bixby lay restlessly in his cage. His body ached from the snake encounter, but his mind raced with worry for Grim. The memory of his friend being led away kept replaying in his head. Then, like a flash of lightning, he remembered the hidden items under the barn's floorboards, the torn police gear, and that old kennel Grim always guarded so carefully. There had to be evidence there, something to prove Granger was lying. Bixby watched as Dr. Martinez talked with a nurse at the far end of the hallway. The cage latch hadn't been fully secured in all the chaos. With careful movements, he nudged it with his nose until it clicked open. His wheels squeaked softly as he lowered himself to the floor. Every muscle protested, but determination pushed him forward. He waited until the staff were distracted with another patient, then slipped through the pet door installed in the clinic's back entrance. The journey to the barn felt longer than ever before. His makeshift cart caught on every bump and stone, and his recent scrape stung with each movement. But Bixby pressed on, thinking of Grim's defeated expression as they took him away. The barn loomed ahead, darker and more imposing, without Grim's presence. Bixby's wheels creaked across the wooden floor as he made his way to the old kennel in the corner. The space felt hollow now, emptied of Grim's protective presence. "There has to be something here," Bixby muttered to himself, pushing aside old blankets with his nose. The kennel was dusty, filled with shadows and forgotten things. Behind a collapsed wooden shelf, something caught his eye, a glint of plastic partially hidden in a torn police harness. Bixby squeezed himself into the tight space, ignoring the protest of his sore muscles. His teeth caught the edge of the harness, and he carefully pulled it out. A small, rectangular device tumbled onto the floor, a dashcam drive, its label faded but still readable. K9 Unit 23-7. Drug Raid, May 15. "The raid," Bixby whispered, his heart pounding. This was it, the truth about what really happened that day, preserved on this small device. But now came the harder part. The drive was too precious to risk damaging with his teeth. So Bixby nosed it carefully onto a flat piece of wood that had broken off the shelf. Gripping the wood's edge between his teeth, he began the arduous task of dragging it out of the barn. His wheels caught on splinters and dips in the floor, making him stumble. Each time he checked to make sure the drive was safe. Outside, the afternoon heat beat down as he pulled his precious cargo toward the fence line where the main road passed. Exhaustion crept in. His recent injuries throbbed, and his legs trembled with effort. But every time he wanted to rest, he thought of Grim sitting alone in a concrete kennel, waiting for a death sentence. Finally, Bixby reached the fence. Cars passed occasionally, but none seemed to notice the small dog and his unusual burden. Time was running out. How long would they keep Grim before making their decision? Just then, Bixby heard the distinctive sound of a skateboard rolling along the sidewalk. A teenage boy wearing a bright blue helmet came to a stop near the fence. He had earbud cords dangling from his pocket and a backpack slung over one shoulder. "Hey there, little guy," the boy said, crouching down. "What have you got there?" His eyes widened as he recognized the device. "Is that a police dash cam?" Bixby wagged his tail and nudged the drive toward the boy's hand, looking up with pleading eyes. "You're that dog from the news, aren't you? The one who helped save Lucy with that German Shepherd?" The teenager picked up the drive, turning it over in his hands. "This looks important." Bixby barked softly, pushing against the boy's leg in the direction of town. "You want me to take this somewhere?" The boy studied the date on the label. "Hey, this is from that raid everyone's talking about." He pulled out his phone, quickly typing something. "My aunt works at the police station. She'll know what to do with this." The teenager carefully tucked the drive into his backpack. "Don't worry, buddy. I'll make sure this gets to the right people." He reached down to gently pat Bixby's head. "You should get back to the vet's office. You look pretty tired." As the boy sped away on his skateboard, Bixby felt a mixture of relief and hope wash over him. The truth about what happened during that raid was finally going to come out. Whatever was on that drive, it had been important enough for Grim to hide all these years. Exhausted but satisfied, Bixby began the slow journey back to the veterinary clinic. His body was spent, but his heart felt lighter. He had done everything he could. Now, he just had to trust that the footage would reveal what really happened that day and clear his friend's name. The dashcam footage spread through the town like wildfire. Every news station in the region played the grainy video on repeat, and social media platforms buzzed with shares and comments. The truth about that fateful raid was finally exposed for all to see. The footage showed Grim in his prime, moving with purpose through the chaos of the drug bust. Gunfire erupted unexpectedly, and there, in crystal clear detail, was the moment that changed everything. A small child had wandered into the crossfire, the dealer's son, who had been sleeping in a back room. Without hesitation, Grim leaped forward, using his body as a shield while guiding the terrified boy to safety. The video continued, showing Grim returning to protect his fellow officers, warning them of hidden assailants with his trained signals. Not once did he act aggressively or out of line. If anything, his actions had prevented what could have been a tragic loss of life. Local television stations interviewed retired officers who had been present that day. One by one, they stepped forward, their long-held silence finally broken. "We were told to keep quiet," said Officer Martinez, now retired. "Chief Granger said it would hurt the department's image if the public knew we'd put a child at risk. He needed a scapegoat, and Grim couldn't defend himself." The public outcry was immediate and fierce. Protesters gathered outside the police station demanding justice for Grim. Social media campaigns called for Chief Granger's resignation. The mayor's office was flooded with calls and emails. Under mounting pressure, the city council called an emergency meeting. Chief Granger sat stone-faced as the dashcam footage played on the large screen. When asked to explain his actions, his carefully constructed story crumbled. "I did what I thought was best for the department," he stammered, his authority diminishing with each word. "The raid was my responsibility. If word got out about the child..." But his excuses fell on deaf ears. The council voted unanimously to remove him from office, effective immediately. As he was escorted from the building, reporters swarmed, their cameras capturing the fall of a man who had sacrificed honor for pride. Meanwhile, at the animal control facility, Grimm's status changed overnight. The euthanasia order was immediately revoked. The same officers who had led him away in shame now returned with heads bowed in respect. They removed his restraints and opened his kennel door with gentle hands. "We're so sorry, boy," one officer whispered, kneeling beside him. "You were a hero all along." But Grimm's thoughts were elsewhere. As soon as he was released, he raced to the veterinary clinic where Bixby lay fighting for his life. The small dog's condition had deteriorated rapidly. The strain of his rescue mission, combined with his previous injuries, had taken a severe toll. Dr. Martinez met Grimm at the clinic entrance, recognizing him from the news. She led him to Bixby's room, where machines beeped steadily, monitoring his weak vital signs. "His front left leg is severely infected," she explained to the gathered clinic staff. "The trauma from the snake encounter, combined with the strain of his recent activities, has caused significant damage. We may have no choice but to amputate." Grimm settled beside Bixby's bed, his large frame gentle against the small dog's fragile form. Bixby's eyes fluttered open briefly, recognition bringing a weak wag to his tail. "You're free," Bixby whispered, his voice barely audible. "They know the truth now." Grimm pressed his nose gently against Bixby's paw. The small dog, who had risked everything to save him, was now fighting his own battle. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The very wheels that had helped Bixby survive and ultimately save both a child and Grimm's reputation might now cost him another limb. The clinic staff watched as Grimm maintained his vigil, refusing to leave Bixby's side. Local news crews gathered outside, but for once, the story wasn't about Grimm's redemption. Instead, they reported on the unlikely friendship between two dogs who had saved each other in different ways, one through brave actions, the other through unwavering faith in the truth. As night fell, Bixby's fever spiked. The veterinary team moved quickly, preparing for emergency surgery. The infection in his leg couldn't wait any longer. Grimm watched anxiously as they wheeled his small friend toward the operating room, his restored reputation feeling hollow in the face of possibly losing the one who had believed in him when no one else would. The veterinary clinic's recovery unit was quiet, except for the steady beeping of monitors. Bixby lay still, his small body wrapped in bandages, his remaining legs twitching occasionally in drugged sleep. The surgery had been successful, but the road ahead would be challenging. Now missing both his hind legs and his front left leg, Bixby would need even more support to move around. Grimm hadn't left the window outside Bixby's room since the surgery. His breath fogged the glass as he kept watch, dark eyes fixed on the rise and fall of his friend's chest. The clinic staff had given up trying to make him leave, instead bringing him water and food right there. Word spread quickly through the small town about the brave dogs who had saved a child and exposed corruption. People began gathering outside the clinic, leaving flowers, dog treats, and hand-drawn cards. Children pressed their faces against the windows, waving at Grimm, who no longer retreated from their attention. "Look, it's the hero dog," they would whisper excitedly, pointing at the German Shepherd who had once been feared as a monster. Police officers, both active and retired, came to pay their respects. They stood at attention, saluting their former brother in arms. Some brought old photos of Grimm in his K9 vest, proud and strong beside his handler. The images were displayed in the clinic's waiting room, telling the story of a loyal officer who never wavered from his duty. On the third day after surgery, a broad-shouldered man with weathered hands and kind eyes walked into the clinic. Roland Callahan, a retired firefighter, asked to speak with Dr. Martinez about both dogs. His own K9 partner, Max, had died saving lives in a warehouse fire 5 years ago. The loss had left a hole in his heart that never quite healed. "I've been following their story," Roland explained, his voice gentle but firm. "I have a farm just outside town. Plenty of space, quiet surroundings. And most importantly, I understand what it means to work alongside a dog who gives everything to protect others." Dr. Martinez listened carefully as Roland detailed his plans. He had already ordered special equipment to help Bixby move around, including a custom-built wheelchair that would support his unique needs. His property was being modified with ramps and soft pathways. "They deserve a home together," Roland said, watching Grim at his usual post by Bixby's window. "A place where they can heal and just be dogs again." The adoption papers were processed that afternoon. Roland spent hours sitting near Grim, not pushing for interaction, just sharing space. Slowly, the German Shepherd began to respond, first with cautious glances, then by accepting treats from Roland's steady hand. A week after surgery, Bixby opened his eyes properly for the first time. His tail wagged weakly when he saw Grim through the window. Dr. Martinez allowed Grim inside for short visits, and the big dog would gently lay his head near Bixby's remaining front paw, offering silent support. "You did it," Bixby whispered during one of these visits, his voice stronger each day. "They all know who you really are now." The town continued to rally around the two dogs. A local carpenter built a special bed that would allow Bixby to rest comfortably with his unique needs. Children from the elementary school created a huge get well card covered in paw prints and hearts. Even the new police chief came to apologize personally to Grim, pinning an honorary K9 medal to his collar. As Bixby grew stronger, Roland became a constant presence. He would sit for hours, reading books aloud to both dogs, telling stories about his time as a firefighter and about Max. His calm, steady energy seemed to soothe something in Grim that had been wounded long ago. Finally, after 3 weeks of recovery, Dr. Martinez declared Bixby strong enough to go home. Roland arrived early that morning with a specially equipped van. The entire clinic staff gathered to say goodbye, many wiping away tears as Roland carefully lifted Bixby into his new wheelchair. The device was a marvel of engineering, lightweight but sturdy, with 3 wheels that would support Bixby's unique configuration of limbs. It took some practice, but soon Bixby was figuring out how to maneuver with his remaining front leg and the wheelchair support. Grim walked beside them as they left the clinic, matching his pace to Bixby's tentative movements. Outside, a small crowd had gathered to wish them well. Children who had once run from Grim now approached carefully, offering gentle pats that the big dog accepted with dignified patience. "Ready to go home, boys?" Roland asked, helping Bixby into the van. Grim jumped in after them, positioning himself protectively next to his small friend. As they drove away from the clinic, Bixby pressed his nose against the window, watching the town that had changed so much for both of them. Beside him, Grim relaxed visibly, as if finally letting go of years of vigilance. Roland glanced in the rearview mirror at his new family, the brave little dog who never gave up, and the loyal protector who had found his way back to trust. They were all carrying scars, visible and hidden, but together they had found something new, a chance to heal, to trust, and to begin again. The van turned onto a quiet country road, heading toward Roland's farm and their new life together. Bixby's wheelchair gleamed in the sunlight streaming through the windows, and Grim's honorary medal caught the light, twinkling like a star of hope guiding them home. Spring sunshine warmed the morning air as Roland's pickup truck rumbled down the familiar country road. In the passenger seat, Bixby sat tall in his new custom-fitted harness, his remaining front legs strong and steady. The wheelchair portion had been carefully engineered with lightweight titanium, painted in cheerful blue, Bixby's favorite color, as they discovered when he kept choosing blue blankets at home. Grim lounged in the back seat, his new leather leash resting loosely across his paws. It wasn't the restrictive tool his police leads had been, but rather a symbol of the connection he now shared with Roland. The retired firefighter had spent weeks earning Grim's trust, never pushing, always patient. Now, the German Shepherd's eyes were calm and alert, watching the familiar landscape roll past. "Almost there, boys," Roland said, turning onto the gravel path that led to the old barn. It had been 2 months since they'd left this place. The barn looked different in the spring light, less threatening, more like the sanctuary it had become. Wildflowers dotted the surrounding field, and birds nested in the weathered eaves. Roland helped Bixby out of the truck, setting him gently in his wheelchair. The wheels, perfectly balanced for his unique needs, rolled smoothly over the packed earth. Grim hopped down next, shaking out his fur and falling into step beside his small friend. Together, they approached the barn doors. Roland held back, understanding this moment belonged to them alone. Bixby's wheels squeaked softly as they entered the cool shadows. Dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight streaming through the roof slats. The space felt smaller now, less imposing. What had once been a place of hiding had become just a barn. Simple, ordinary, yet sacred in its own way. "Remember when I first came here?" Bixby asked, his voice carrying clearly in the quiet space. "I was so scared." Grim's tail swayed gently. "You were braver than you knew," he replied, his deep voice soft with memory. They moved through the familiar space, past the old kennel where the dashcam footage had been hidden, beyond the loose floorboards where Grim had buried his past. These weren't places of shame anymore, but markers of survival, of truth revealed, of justice restored. Bixby rolled to a stop near the back wall, where he'd spent those first nights watching Grim from the shadows. His wheelchair caught a beam of sunlight, sending little rainbow reflections dancing across the walls. "I didn't know then," he said thoughtfully, "that being different wasn't the same as being broken." Grim settled beside him, his massive frame a gentle presence. "You taught me that," he responded. "When everyone else saw a monster, you saw the truth." They sat in comfortable silence, letting the memories wash over them. The fear, the loneliness, the desperate hope that had brought them together. It was all part of their story now, but no longer its defining chapter. Outside, voices carried on the spring breeze. Children's laughter growing closer. Once, such sounds would have sent Grim deeper into hiding and Bixby shrinking into himself. Now, they turned toward it. As they emerged from the barn, 5 children from the nearby houses were running across the field, their parents following at a distance. These were the same children who had once whispered fearfully about the monster dog in the barn. Now they called out cheerfully, "Bixby! Grim!" The smallest girl, Sarah, reached them first. She carried a dandelion crown she'd woven herself. With gentle reverence, she placed it on Bixby's head, careful not to startle him. "For the brave puppy," she declared. Her brother Tommy approached Grim with equal care, holding out a tennis ball. "Want to play, boy?" Grim looked at Roland, who nodded encouragingly. The German Shepherd accepted the ball carefully, his tail wagging with newfound joy. Soon, he was playing a gentle game of fetch, always mindful of his strength around the children. Bixby rolled among them, his wheels handling the uneven ground with ease. The children took turns walking beside him, asking questions about his wheelchair and listening intently as Roland explained how it worked. "Does it hurt?" Sarah asked, patting Bixby's head softly. "Not anymore," Roland answered for him. "He's getting stronger every day." The afternoon sun began to dip, painting the barn in warm golden light. It was time to head home, their real home now, with Roland. As they prepared to leave, Bixby and Grim paused for one last look at the barn. "We made it," Bixby said quietly. Grim pressed his nose gently against Bixby's ear. "We did it together." The children waved goodbye as Roland helped Bixby back into the truck. Grim jumped in after, settling into his spot with the comfortable familiarity of routine. As they pulled away, the barn grew smaller in the rearview mirror, no longer a place of exile, but a milestone on their journey to healing. Roland drove them home as the sky turned pink with sunset. Bixby's wheelchair was secured safely in the back, its blue frame catching the last rays of daylight. Grim's leash lay forgotten on the seat, unnecessary now that trust had replaced control. They were different, all 3 of them, marked by loss, changed by experience. But in finding each other, they had discovered that being different didn't mean being alone. Sometimes the most unlikely combinations created the strongest bonds. A disabled puppy, a misunderstood guardian, and a grieving firefighter. 3 lost souls who had found their way to belonging. The truck turned onto the familiar road leading to Roland's farm, where ramps and smooth paths waited to welcome them home. Bixby and Grim sat side by side, their bodies bearing the marks of their past, but their spirits undefeated. They were no longer the forgotten ones, the discarded and feared. They were family. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.